What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the 10-7 MMA Show. Sorry, I'm looking a little tired. I'm just realizing as I'm looking at myself in the screen, but it's been a long weekend, a lot of work, but good stuff. And wow, what a weekend, what a card. Strange, a little bit strange. I think a lot of folks are disappointed. I want to talk about that a little bit. I'll give my feelings. I want to hear Justin's thoughts as well. And it's I don't know. I don't know. It is wild. I enjoyed the card. I'll be honest. I know a lot of people didn't. I know Justin even turned it off at one point because he wasn't so into it, and I totally get that. But just to me, it's just such a wild weekend. By the way, I did want to say our channel is growing. And I want to thank you guys so much, everybody who has subscribed, who's been following along. We're at 77 subscribers, and I don't take that lightly. I've been on the journey before. I have another YouTube channel, Scalar Learning, which is a math-related channel. It's just past 100,000 subs. So I know the journey. I've been on it, and the beginning parts are actually some of the most exciting, just to start getting that little bit of traction. And this is just getting more and more fun. So we're having a blast. Thank you guys so much. Justin, yeah, like you watched the fight. But before we jump into the first fight, we're going to talk about Bryce Mitchell versus Emmett, Josh Emmett. Before we jump in, I mean, yeah, tell us your overall thoughts, and then maybe you can jump in to give your thoughts on that insanely brutal knockout where apparently Bryce Mitchell was having a seizure, which is super scary. But yeah, like, go for it.
Yeah, man, it was a great fight. Emmett's a dog. You know, he fought my teammate Danny Ige a long time ago. We're talking about probably the heaviest hitter at the 145-pound division. You know, when you look at Bryce Mitchell, very great wrestler, very great grappler, but he doesn't have that one-shot knockout power. You know, you watch a lot of his fights. Him and I have shared similar opponents. You know, he also fought Danny Ige, fought Charles Rosa, you know, opponent of mine. And most of his game plan is just to wrestle and grapple, get to that mount position, look for his side choke. You know, he has a couple twister finishes at all. But you look at a guy like Josh Emmett, super strong, short, stocky. You know, I put a little bit of cash on Emmett right before the fight just because I thought, man, I mean, he's a plus 200 dog. He has that one-shot knockout power. And can Bryce Mitchell take him down? You know, after watching the fight, Bryce looked like he was on his heels the whole time. Emmett was putting a pace on him, you know, had his back against him, feinted low, bang, right hand. Good night, Bryce Mitchell.
Okay, a couple things I want to say about that. By the way, that's awesome on your bet. I placed 2 bets, lost both of them. I think like the problem is
those two.
I'm betting with my heart too much, and but that's what's fun to me. I can't I couldn't have bet against Ferguson. I just couldn't do it. And yeah, I bet on Colby. But anyways, okay, let me tell you something that Josh Thompson I've been listening to everything this weekend because the whole card, to me, regardless of the criticisms, I was fascinated by this entire card. And hey, Western Mass Climber's back. He said 10-7. What's up? Thank you for joining again. Here's the thing. Like, I just lost my train. Oh, yeah. So Josh Thompson from the Weighing In podcast said the day of the one-dimensional fighter is over. He put Colby in that category. I don't know if I agree because I want to get your thoughts on this, you know, to hear your thoughts. But he said Colby, like somebody like that who's kind of a one-dimensional fighter with, you know, not great striking, or somebody like Bryce Mitchell. He's like, those days are past. You now need to be well-rounded. And he pointed to the example of Leon Edwards, a classic striker who is now really striving to master grappling, really striving to say, hey, I'm not going to let this be a shortcoming. I'm going to be a master of all facets or elements of mixed martial arts. Do you put Bryce Mitchell in that category as a one-dimensional fighter, or, you know, what are your thoughts or response to that?
Yeah, I do. You know, I really do. And he's so good at that one-dimensional style of wrestling, grappling, that he's had so much success, you know, leading up to this fight going forward. That being said, yeah, I definitely think he's a one-dimensional fighter. It's easy to game plan for him, but he's so good at grappling and wrestling is he's saying, hey, look, I'm going to wrestle and grapple you, and I hope you're good enough to stop it. And up until this point, nobody's been able to stop it, you know. And, you know, you take a guy like Josh Emmett, who is a vet of the sport. He's fought who's who in the sport. And, you know, you just, unfortunately, you have to have more than that. And, you know, Josh Emmett, you know, talked about, you know, stopping his takedown, stopping his grappling. And, you know, that big right hand was a great stop sign for all that.
One last question for you on this front. I think it was Lucas. I don't want to say actually because I can't remember who said it, but somebody was like, "Oh man, that was such a brutal knockout. I want to see Bryce Mitchell retire after this." Somebody else was saying that he's going to have a medical suspension of at least 6 months because it was so bad. I mean, is that a reasonable conclusion to come to just because he had one bad knockout, or do you actually feel the same?
That's the dumbest shit I've ever heard, dude. Like, it's all these people that aren't fighters telling fighters what they should do. And there's nothing more irritating than that. When I had my brief stint in the UFC, like, man, you should see the emails I got of all these losers, these fat pieces of shit that are sitting on their couch watching me perform at the highest level, telling me what I should and shouldn't do. Again, I'll get followed. Shut your fucking mouth. Bryce Mitchell is a fucking gangster. He's a warrior. I don't even care for him that much as a fighter. But dude, he needs it. What? He's just going to retire and not collect a payday. He hasn't made enough money in his career to retire. And that's the thing. Like, we're fighters. We sign up. We know we can get knocked out. We know we could get brain damage. We know we're going to get injured. We talked about this with the stoppage by Kerry Hatley a couple weeks ago and Bobby Green. Like, dude, all these people just really need to take a back seat. Let us do what we do. Let us do what we want. If Bryce Mitchell decides, hey, look, that was brutal, man, and that really showed me how much damage I can take in this sport, and he decides to retire, I respect that. But dude, the guy's a fighter. How many losses? Is that his first loss?
It's not his first loss. He lost to Ilya Topuria, but he was also sick during that fight. And,
okay, dude, so
yeah.
my dude's fighting the best fighters in the world. He's had two losses.
Yeah.
And fans are like, oh, he should retire. Shut the fuck up, dude. Go back to your 9-to-5 job and let the professional athletes do what we do.
You know what? It's interesting because, like, I try and put myself in your shoes, and I did think it was weird that somebody, like I said, okay, I think it was Lucas Tracy MMA. I don't want to throw it out there. I hope I'm not wrong about that, but if I am wrong, I apologize. But the main thing is, like, I think about when people will look at how much I work, for example, be like, dude, you need to slow down, you need to do this and that, and I'm like, you have no idea what you're talking about. You don't know my mentality. You know what I mean? So I can only imagine you would feel that, but like 10x, right? People are telling you to basically not even slow down, to quit. Like, it's crazy to me. But anyways, I thought you might say something like that, so that makes a lot of sense. I know Justin has to go, so I want to kind of blaze through some of these topics to a greater degree, and then there's going to be two here that I'm going to just cover by myself after Justin's got to bounce. We're going to move on to topic number 2, fight number 2, which was Tony Ferguson versus Paddy Pimblett. Now, just to preface this, I did end up putting money on Ferguson, and I was feeling kind of confident, actually, to some degree. I think if you put, let's say, gun in my head, right, where my life depends on it, I probably would have picked Paddy, but I was starting to feel a little bit more confident. I even heard Michael Bisping prior to the fight pick Ferguson, which made me feel a lot better. But yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, what did you think? Oh, Western Mass Climber said he thinks Tony should keep fighting, which is also interesting. But yeah, like, what was your takeaway from the fight? And really what I'd be curious to know is, like, do you think did Paddy show some good stuff here? Number one. Number 2, yeah, what do you think is next for Tony?
I'm a Tony Ferguson fan guy. I'm gonna ride. I'm gonna, be on his bandwagon until the wheels fall off, man. I wish nothing but the best. The guy's a legend of the sport. He's a pioneer of the sport. And I saw a statistic that, from like 2017 to 2000, that he was like 15-1 or 12-1 or something like that on a 12-fight win streak. And since then, he's 0-7. I'm not ever one to tell someone they should retire, because that's their decision. And that's that. And I hate when people give their opinion when they think people should retire. Look, I'm on a 6-fight or 5 or 6-fight losing streak, depending on how this outcome comes out. I feel great. I'm mentally strong. I physically feel great. Unfortunately, age is just catching up to me, and it's catching up to him too. He looked really slow. He looked a lot slower, just like Colby when we talk about the Colby fight, man. Unfortunately, all these high level guys, Tony Ferguson, Colby, regardless how you feel about Colby, like, I mean, we're all going to go off the same way. There's very, very rare does a fighter retire. I can actually only think of 2. Khabib and GSP were able to retire on the top. Unfortunately, we're striving for that paycheck. We're always striving for that next challenge. Our mind is there, but our body just can't keep up with what we want to do and what we're expected to do. And in our, like, dude, I'm telling you, when I'm getting ready for a fight, I'm getting ready for a fight February 10th. It's like, fuck, I know what I have to do, but can my body hold up long enough to do it? And I think that's where Tony Ferguson is at. And I think he's going to keep fighting. He's a warrior. He's never going to not fight, whether he goes to the PFL. I don't know what the UFC is going to do with him. He's lost 7 fights in a row. He just lost to an up-and-coming guy that I don't think is very – I mean, he's good. And when I say a guy's a bad fighter, I mean, dude, they're the best in the world. I'm just being comparative to the top fighters in the world. Paddy, he's doing what he has to do to win, and now he's 4-0 in the UFC. He just beat a vet. I mean, as much as I didn't care for him at the beginning, I really appreciated and respected his lead up to this fight. and he did what he had to do to win, man. You know, he didn't take any unnecessary risks. He controlled the fight, and he beat Tony Ferguson fair and square. You know, again, I'm reiterating, I'll never tell a fighter he should retire. That's up to Tony. And I'll respect and appreciate anything he does from here on out.
And by the way, so to me, but David Goggins did mention something that he said, I think after the fight, I can't remember who he said this to, maybe Dana White or something, but David Goggins on behalf of Tony is like, I think Tony's going to retire after this fight. That's what he said. Who knows what's going to happen? Who knows what Tony wants to do? And same thing, I wish him the best of luck. And I don't know, man, I am such a fan of his. But when coming back to Paddy, he got the win. So much credit to him. But your boy, James Lynch, which we can talk about that at another time. The journalist, James Lynch, I listened to him this morning. I even popped on his live stream. And he made the statement that he like him and a few other people are just saying they just don't think Paddy is a very good fighter. And like, I maybe don't have the eye for it because I thought it was a pretty nice victory. Granted, he got gassed because he went all out in the first round, so that wasn't great. And I think there is a theory that he might have broken his nose, so he was having trouble breathing for the second and the third round. But like, and I know he sticks his chin up and he was having problems with that as well. But like, to me, I think it's an impressive victory and it shows some skill and he's still improving. So like, is Paddy somebody that could be in title contention at some point, maybe the next 2-3 years?
I mean, it just really depends on his work ethic and you know, his strive to get better. You know, Paddy, I'm slowly flipping, you know, to a fan. I really, when he came into the UFC, he was loud, he was obnoxious. I'm like, all right, this guy's gonna have to get knocked down a couple pegs, but he keeps finding ways to win. You know, he beat Tony Ferguson, and granted, it's an old Tony Ferguson, it's a beat up Tony Ferguson. He's 0-7 in his last 7, but still, it's Tony Ferguson, and Tony's a dog. Paddy, you know, if I were to give him, and who am I to speak? Because dude, the guy just beat Tony Ferguson, you know. So, but if I were his coaching staff, or if I was somebody close to him, you know, I really would like to see him start really focusing on his diet in between fights. He's ballooning up so much. He's 28 years old, and I'm telling you, man, from experience, I used to do that too. Sometimes I'd be 200 pounds after a fight, sit around fat, be like, oh, when fight camp comes around, I'll just die and I'll lose my weight, and I always did. But once I hit 30, dude, it became hard. The weight cuts became tougher. I had to sit in the bath longer. Training became tougher. I couldn't burn as many calories in the day because I want my body to hold up. When you're 20 years old to 30 years old, dude, you're the top of the world, man. You can get in that hot tub. You can shred that weight, train really hard. But I think he's doing the right things, and I think he's improving every fight. But his shenanigans before fights of ballooning up to however big he gets, yeah, I think that's going to hurt him long term. And if he doesn't get that under control now, he's not going to have a long career.
And he did mention that he's going to try to not do that anymore. And he said his coaches were like kind of laughing that he's saying he's not going to do it anymore. Like, oh, you probably will to some degree, but he does seem committed to that. And that's exciting. And by the way, I do have to say, I think he's turned a corner here. I think he had a lot of hate from the Jared Gordon fight. I think also people are talking about it, but he went at Ariel pretty hard. And I think Ariel's got fans. And I think people didn't like that and felt like it was unfair. And that is also part of the reason why he was disliked for a long time. Couldn't fight, couldn't do anything to redeem his name. I think he brought himself back big time. I think he conducted himself well. I don't know. I like Paddy, and I hope he does keep at it and show his commitment to his diet and see what he can do, because I think he's exciting. All right, we're gonna keep it rolling to you wanted to skip to 5 and 6, right? Leon versus Colby. Yes. And okay. I hope I can just ask you a quick question before you got to go about Shavkat-Wonderboy, because apparently it came out that he had an injury in this fight, which is crazy, which explains a lot about his performance. But we're going to come back to that. Let's talk about Leon versus Colby. So much controversy, so many people upset. People even upset with Leon. I just don't get it. But a lot of folks were like, hey, some people even seem more upset with Leon that the fight was quote unquote boring. So this is the thing. I get it. Like, I get the first 2 rounds didn't feel that action packed. I don't see why Leon should get any of the blame. It was really that Colby seemed to be, it was a couple things, right? And I talked about this in a short that I posted last night. I think either Colby was injured because he looked so slow. I know you guys think he just aged in the last 2 years and he slowed down, but like, it was such a drag. If you rewatch the Masvidal fight, like it was just crazy. And maybe he was just that scared of like some shot that he couldn't see that would come up. And Leon was switching stances, and I know that was throwing Colby off, and he did mention that. But there was something, it just didn't seem like typical Colby. So Anyways, I want to turn it over to you first. What are your thoughts of the fight and like Colby's performance?
Dude, I turned the fight off. I turned it off after the third round. I was so disgusted. I'm not a Colby Covington fan, and I am now a Leon Edwards fan because, I his back was against the wall. Dude's never going to be a champion again. Back to that one-dimensional fighter of wrestling and grappling. Like his shots look terrible. Like
Yeah.
he and Leon and what was really cool that I really respected Leon for was he got taken down. I don't remember if it was the second or the third round. Got back to his feet and then took Colby down. And he did that just to say like, hey, look, I'm the fucking man. And you know what? Go
Yeah.
fuck yourself. And dude, I wasn't a Leon Edwards fan before, not because I don't like the guy or anything. I develop a relationship with fighters, whether from meeting them, whether from training with them, or listening to him on the mic. Leon never caught me again, it's not that I don't like the guy. I mean, I'm sure he's a really nice guy. He's an incredible fighter. He's the world champion. But he just never caught my attention with on the mic. And that's usually what catches my attention for me to be a fan. But how he kept his composure after all the shit that Colby talked and how he demonstrated a game plan. I listened this morning that he said GSP called him the night before the fight to say, hey, take these steps to focus and take that negative energy that he's thrown at you and use it into positive energy. And Leon Edwards is a fucking gangster. He came out, kept his composure, didn't rush, he didn't open up. He didn't expose himself in any holes to get taken down. Dude, he just fought a perfect fight. And you know what? And that's one of the things that I think that really surprised Colby is Colby talked all that shit. And I know a lot of people are saying he's injured, but typically when you're injured, and that's the thing, everybody's injured when they go into a fight. We have all hard training camps. You always will have nagging injuries. I think that Colby was trying to get Leon off his game by talking all that shit so he would overcommit. But Leon being the champion, Leon being the vet, never fed into Colby's game, and he just kind of slowly stalked him down and picked him apart from afar. And like I said, maybe that was Colby's game plan to get him off his game, to get him to overcommit. I don't know. Colby looked like shit. I hope Colby retires. I'm so disgusted with all like. I'm so disgusted with Colby Covington. Like he talks all that shit and didn't back anything up, and he did it with Usman as well. Like, hey, you know what? That's one thing I respect about Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor called his shots. Hey, I'm going to knock him on the first round. I'm going to knock him on the second round. And if he didn't, he was trying to. Colby sat back like a little bitch and didn't do anything. And if he sees this, I don't really care, man. What's he going to do? Show up to the gym and confront me? I don't care. I was a Colby Covington fan. I thought he crossed the line on the mic prior to the fight, but after his performance, he didn't even try to win. To me, it looked like he was trying to go to decision so he could say it was a bad decision, and I just don't like that bullshit game.
So there's so much to unpack here because when we talked, okay, so let me tell you a couple of things that I heard over the weekend that I think are really interesting. So number one, Dana White said that as soon as Colby pulled that stunt about saying those really terrible things, the pay-per-view sales went up by 25% of the pre-buys instantly. Okay. So that translates to immediately more cash for Leon. But then, and I know you talked about it too, like, hey, he's a good dance partner. He's making you more money, this and that. But then you hear Leon after the fight talk about how when Colby did that, he went to the back and he cried out of anger, and it brought up a very painful memory. He had to call his family. And then you were like, and look, I haven't gone through that yet, knock on wood, right? That horrible thing. And so I can't even really relate exactly, but I can empathize to some degree that it would just be soul crushing for somebody to bring up something like that. Like, we look at this as entertainment, right? But then it's like the reality hits, that's his dad. And that's a painful memory. And Colby brought it up, and like, where's the like, so it's just so weird. There's just so many things. Does this change your mind, or does this give you when you hear that about the sales, but then you also hear how devastated Leon was and how his whole team had to come together to calm him down? Like, what are your thoughts on what Colby said? By the way, let me throw out one other piece of information. Josh Thompson on the Weighing In podcast said this weekend that he lost his father at a young age, and that was a completely disgusting statement. And he says going forward, he will never watch a Colby Covington fight ever again, and that his co-host will have to break down the fights, and he refuses to do it. And that's how outraged he was. What are your thoughts?
I mean, when you have a personal loss like that, especially, I mean, that touches people, man. Just like you're saying, he's not going to cover any more of his fights. And, I don't blame him for that. But this is a business, and the more these fans realize that this is a business, and you said it with what you just said, sales shot up 25%. Dana White is, he's laughing all the way to the bank. He doesn't, I mean, I can't imagine him caring about anything. The problem with what's going on with the UFC right now is everybody is taking these personal digs now. And it's getting it to be a bit much. At first it was fine, and I love shit talk, and I love when people cross the line. But now everyone's crossing the line more and more and more and more to see what they can get away with. We have one of the other champions, I'm not going to mention his name, but talking about rape, talking about being molested by their family. Like, see, it's getting a little bit too much. I love the WWE factor of, hey, I'm gonna fuck you up, I'm gonna kill you, and blah blah blah. But it's getting really personal right now, and it's a little bit much to read, especially oh, your fucking dad, he's a piece of shit. I'm glad it's a good thing he was murdered, and then I have another guy talking about being men molesting kids, and it's just like, I don't know, man. It's just getting a really touchy subject. And dude, I'm not a liberal by any means, and I'm an advocate for freedom of speech, and but like that, we're professionals at the end of the day, and I think every now and then crossing the boundary, but is fine, and it keeps it interesting. But now I just feel people are everybody is just taking it overboard, trying to get views, and everyone's trying to get views and trying to get pay-per-view sales, and I don't know, man. It's just it's getting away from the sport. That's why Colby's in the title contention. He hasn't fought in 2 years, and he's able to talk his way into these titles because Dana White knows that, hey, when he fights, he's going to go crazy on the mic. He's going to have these 25%, boosts in sales for something he's going to say. And unfortunately, that really sucks for Leon. And I can't imagine. I lost my sister. I was in college. She was 2 years younger than me. I lost her in a car accident. So I've lost, people close to me. And I couldn't imagine getting ready for a fight and somebody mentioning her. I can't imagine it, and I would lose it.
So what do you think? I mean, this whole thing has been crazy, and I think the way that Colby kind of took the loss and what he was saying afterwards, it seemed like the fans really turned on him. In the post-fight presser, and a reporter asked him if he would fight Shavkat next, which kind of makes sense considering he won and he's moving up. And Colby just said, like, no, that doesn't make sense. He wants to fight Wonderboy, which seems bizarre. And obviously he's doing it because he thinks it's a potentially favorable matchup. What do you see next for Colby? Or do you think that's ridiculous? Or what do you see next?
I mean, if he got the Wonderboy fight, they're both coming off losses. Wonderboy got subbed against Shavkat, and Colby got his ass whipped for 5 rounds, in my opinion. Maybe, I didn't watch the 4th and the 5th, but he was getting his ass whipped so bad in the first 3. I can only imagine that it was probably similar. I know at the end of the 5th round, Colby had the takedown. He gets up and throws his hand up, like, put your hands down, bro. You just embarrassed yourself. You talked all this shit about how you're going to take dude to the 7th layer of hell, and you just got your fucking ass whipped. Sit down, son. Like, I hope the UFC doesn't give him Wonderboy, because unfortunately Wonderboy is back to that old school 40-year-old one-dimensional fighter, and that's a great matchup for Colby, and that's why Colby's calling him off. And as after Shavkat took Wonderboy down, subbed him in a side choke, I'm sure Colby would be looking to do the same thing. And unfortunately for the UFC, I mean, it could go either way. Like, is Dana White going to be like, all right, this is we want to keep Colby relevant, we want to get him a win, this is the guy to give him against. But with that being said, Wonderboy is such a great guy, and he's been great for the sport and great for the business. Do you really want to give him a loss, or a potential loss, to the piece of shit of Colby Covington?
Yeah, it's funny. Western Mass Climber just said Colby should become a pro wrestler. Get him out of the UFC. Hey, maybe that's gonna be maybe that's gonna be his next move.
I actually would rather see Colby, and I would gain so much more respect for him as a pro wrestler than I do an MMA fighter right now. Because again, he's that old school. He's 38 years old. He's one-dimensional. He's calling out Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, which is a great call out on his point, because again, it's a perfect stylistic matchup, and they're both coming off losses. I just hope the UFC doesn't do him any favors by giving him that matchup.
Last question. I know we're rushing along because we got to get to topic number 6, which is relating to your teammate Sean Strickland. But before we get there, super quick, Dana, man, okay, wait. There's 2 things, but I'm gonna throw one in first. If we have time, we'll get to the second. Dana White said that Colby looked old and slow in the post-fight presser. I mean, like, and normally he's always kind of got Colby's back. He's always defended him. Does that tell you anything about how the UFC now views Colby, what the UFC, their plans maybe for him going forward?
I mean, it's Dana White hit the nail on the head, man. He looked old, he looked slow, he looked timid, he looked everything that he's not supposed to. And he probably just lost a bunch of points because the fight was so fucking boring, man. I know there was a lot of views, but you know what, Colby, go out on your shield. To me, I felt that Colby was fighting not to lose, and I genuinely think that his goal after the third round was to go to decision, just so he could
I think
say,
so
oh,
too.
I really feel that way. I don't think he was trying to win. Round 1 through 3, it was so uneventful. Like I said, I turned it off. So I'm hoping he just lost some stock with the UFC. If you're gonna talk, that's one thing. Again, talk about Conor McGregor. He talked shit all up and down, even when he fought Khabib, but he still went after Khabib. And arguably he won a round. Like, he was trying to win.
Oh yeah,
He didn't count himself out. Colby, on the other hand, he talked all that shit and did everything possible just not to get finished, man. And hats off to Leon Edwards. He's won me over as a fan.
me too.
I was worried that I wasn't worried, but I thought that, hey, he's a striker. Colby has, world-class wrestling. I don't think he's going to be able to stop it. And I was wrong, man. And unfortunately, well, I shouldn't say unfortunately, because it's not unfortunate that I was wrong. It's okay to be wrong. I just thought Colby was going to bring more to the table than he did.
Okay, I know you got to go soon. Do we have time to talk about Sean Strickland?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so tell us. I mean, this was crazy, right? I just kind of put Sean Strickland, but it's really about that brawl that took place. And again, going back to your point about people crossing the line, saying things maybe that we shouldn't be saying, and talking about Sean's personal life. And I think this was an interesting scenario because you hear Dricus's response, and he's like, "Well, Sean's talking about everybody, this and that. So why can't I say something?" And then as soon as I say something, he jumps over and does all this. So it's like, it's a complicated issue, I think. And Sean strikes me as that type of guy, and that's why people love him. Is like, dude, you're gonna have to answer for your words, right? You can't just say stuff, or you're not gonna get away. He's not gonna let you get away with these. He's gonna hold you accountable because that's how he is. It's sort of like that, just black and white, which is, I think, an admirable thing to a large extent, right? Like, hey, there's certain boundaries. You cross them, there's repercussions, plain and simple, no exceptions. Even if we're gonna fight, no exceptions, right? What are your thoughts about that whole ordeal and Sean's reaction?
Hey, you know what? I love Sean Strickland. Dude, I love his attitude. And what a lot of people don't know, and I'm gonna go to bat for Sean here a little bit, is Sean. I know a lot of people. I'm in my car right now. Whenever you see Sean Strickland get in his car and pull out his phone, some shit's about to go down. But we got to talk about, this guy is the hardest working guy at Xtreme Couture. I'm leaving the gym right now. He is the hardest working guy at the gym. There's nobody that outworks Sean Strickland. And when I see that and he can implement that, into his game, hey, love him or hate him, the guy works his ass off. And he's an on-spot kind of guy. Like, hey, fuck, when I see you, if he says something, if he says when he sees you, he's going to fight you, he's going to do it. And I mean, honestly, I'm going to blame Dana White for this altercation. He said, I almost feel like he did it intentionally just, to see what would happen, because I mean, Dana White's a smart guy. He's built the UFC, so strong. Why would he sit Sean Strickland 2 rows? Like, there was 1 row and then there was Dricus, like, right next to each other. I mean, it's just a recipe for disaster. Dricus called him out, and and he asked that the lady and that kid to move to the side, which I thought was very admirable of him.
Yes,
and they scrapped. Man, I thought that was cool. And you know what? That's something that I really admire about Sean, and that's something that I know it sounds silly, but it's something that I have actually wanted to try, not wanted to try, but I'm trying to be better about. People talk shit to me, it's on spot. Like, I'm done taking disrespect, and Sean's like that, and I respect it. And Dricus got slapped up a little bit. Nobody got hurt. It was fine. It was just a little 10-second altercation. But I mean, it's ultimately Dana White's fault for sitting next to each other.
Yeah, and I mean, even Dricus looked fine after the fact, and Sean obviously looked fine and just kind of rolled out. So it was entertaining. Hey, we talk about pay-per-view buys. Guarantee you that's gonna shoot pay-per-view buys through the roof, and it's a good. I mean, whatever you want to say, it's a good dance partner. I was excited before just because I think it's a really cool matchup. But I mean, I don't know. It adds a little heat to it. So what can you say? And luckily, both guys are okay. Gilbert Burns' kids and his wife. That's who he has to move aside. They're all fine. And she didn't really seem to have a problem with it either. She's like, hey, he asked her kids to move over so he could do his thing, and it kind of worked out. Thank God. Thank God. All right. So listen, there's 2 other topics. Do you have to go, or can we still hit a quick discussion about Shavkat?
I have to go in about 2 minutes. I'm about to pull in.
All right, so we'll just here's what I'll tell you what. You go ahead, you bounce. I'm just gonna quickly give my thoughts on the last 2 fights. But anyways, thank you so much for joining. And guys, thank you again. And Western Mass Climber, you've had our back throughout this whole thing. He says I'm team. You can tell Sean this. He says I'm team Sean. Dricus is a creep. There you go.
Hell yeah.
So that's that. All right, Justin, you go do your thing, and I'm gonna wrap up. And all right, take it easy. So anyways, we're going to talk quickly about the Shavkat versus Wonderboy fight. What did get some criticism? It's kind of crazy to me that it did get criticism because Shavkat was the first ever to submit Wonderboy. He did it in round 2, and people were like, oh, maybe he's not. I mean, it just boggles my mind. That's why I wanted to hear Justin's thoughts on this too. It boggles my mind that people are like, maybe he's not that good when he's the first to ever submit Wonderboy. But it did come out that apparently he had an injury that requires surgery. I'm going to look it up right now. So this is even crazier. Hold on. I'm going to tell you what the injury was. And he needs it's a very serious ankle injury. This is insane. Prior to the UFC 296, and it needed surgery. And he said, nope, I'm going to take the fight first and I'll get the surgery after. He didn't want to wait. And I think that's some of the reason why we didn't see him look as fast, as crisp, as whatever, right? And kind of maybe it didn't seem as exciting as some of his other finishes. But the fact is he still got the submission, and it's crazy. And he's going to the top. A lot of folks are saying the next thing for him, because the UFC is really behind him and really wants to see him get a title shot, is to wait out for the winner, theoretically, of Leon. And I guess Bilal is coming up next, though who knows? You never know. Dana White wouldn't commit to the Bilal fight. So I guess we'll have to see what's next for Leon and who he's fighting. But it could be Shavkat. You never know. Or it could be Bilal. I would have to say, I hate to say this, but from a fan perspective, and I do want Bilal to get what's due to him, and man, it's kind of unfair, but Leon and Bilal have fought already. I guess from a fan's perspective, you're just asking me what I'm more interested in seeing. I'd be more interested in seeing him go up against Shavkat. So anyways, and then now let's get to the last topic. I know it's topic 4. We're doing a little out of order. I want to talk about the Pantoja versus Royval fight because, in fairness, just to be totally transparent, it wasn't the fight that I was most excited about. I didn't watch a lot of the lead up, and I saw Pantoja against Brandon Moreno in some of his previous fights, and I do have a lot of respect for him. Royval, I really didn't know too much about, so I started rewatching some of his old fights prior to the fight, and I started getting excited because he is an exciting fighter, and it's a style that I really like. Of course, I train Muay Thai myself, and I love to see good striking. I did think the fight was really interesting. I know it got some different criticisms. It was a very technical fight, and I was rooting for Royval, and he had his moments. But at the end of the day, Pantoja was just way too dominant. I think in the grappling arena, he really set the pace and set the tone, despite looking exhausted throughout the majority of the fight. But I was thoroughly entertained. I think maybe because I was rooting for Royval to see if he could come away, pull away, and let go of some of that striking, let go of his hands, which he did some good work there. But at the end of the day, Pantoja was just too dominant and won in very dominant fashion. So massive props to Pantoja. Definitely made me a fan or a bigger fan of Pantoja. So I'm excited to see him again. I will definitely be watching Royval's next fight as well. That was super cool. Maybe one day he'll come back and take another crack at the title shot. But that pretty much wraps it up. I think I want to end this show going back, putting the focus back on Leon. I think we spent the majority of that segment talking about Colby, and perhaps that is unfair. So let me just say this about Leon. Despite the criticism that he got, I think it's totally unfounded. I think the fact that you can say the first two rounds were quote unquote boring, which I hate when people say that, it was strategic, and he didn't want to engage because he was confused that Colby was being so cautious and wasn't engaging with him. I don't think that blame falls on Leon. quote unquote falls on Colby. Again, Colby was doing what he felt like he needed to do. So Leon had the perfect setup. He was just doing that long range sparring kickboxing where he's so comfortable. Why would he do anything different than that, in my opinion? What is he supposed to rush in and risk getting knocked out or submitted? But to get a little bit more entertainment. So I think that is totally unfounded. I thought he did a phenomenal job of maintaining his composure. The fact that he was back there crying after those pretty terrible comments from Colby, I mean, that is a mental feat that people need to really, I think, take note of. And that was phenomenal. So just so much tremendous respect. And then what about the fact that he took him down multiple times? I know people were saying, oh, Leon ended the fight on his back and he shouldn't have done that. Why? What does it matter? He knew he had it locked up. Why does it matter that he needs to risk a submission by trying to get out of that position just so he can end the fight standing up, looking victorious? I just don't get it. Like, so what? He kind of held that position and played it safe. He had won dominantly throughout the rest of the fight. Not to mention he got into that position not by a mistake, but because he wanted to prove a point and he wanted to go in and grapple with arguably one of the best grapplers in the history of the UFC. I mean, if people can't recognize the cojones and that amazing just confidence that we see Leon just kind of bubbling out with now since he's become champion, and respect that, I don't know what else I don't know what else is going to impress you, because that blew my mind. And despite what people said, sure, the first 2 rounds were a little bit confusing in terms of not what I expected, but I was thoroughly, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. And the fact that at the end, Leon got on the mic and opened up and admitted, right? A lot of people said they wouldn't have done that. He admitted that it devastated him, those comments. And he went back and cried and he was rattled. He said it straight up, man, like, that really made me connect with him, and I respect him tremendously, and I'm such a big fan of Leon Edwards, more so than ever. But I already was a fan, but like even more so than ever. And last thing I want to say, right? We talk about people being great on the mic. I know Justin was saying that. I'll say this. This is my thoughts. One of the ways that people are amazing on the mics, and I say this from the perspective of a fan who loves to listen to all the fighter interviews, one of the best things you can do, you don't have to be flashy necessarily, you don't have to be funny necessarily, you don't have to, but you just got to be real. And if you open yourself up and are real, kind of like somebody like Sean Strickland, and just let the world see who you truly are and not feel like you have to say certain things or whatever, that makes you an amazing magnetic personality, in my opinion, because people can see the real you and they can get a chance to connect with you. And that was an example of that. And I think Leon never tries to be anybody but himself. But now with more practice, with more exposure in front of the cameras, he's able to just be himself in front of the camera, which is an awesome person, as we can see. So I hope to see more of that. And I can't wait to see his next fight and his next matchup, whether it is against Bilal, Shavkat, whoever. I'm game. I'm ready. So congratulations to Leon. And I really enjoyed the entire card. So thank you guys so much for joining. We'll be back Friday, every Mondays and Fridays, 1:30 p.m. PST. Thank you guys so much for joining. We'll see you in the next video. Take it easy.